Hi, everyone. My name is Kylee Leota, joining you from Brisbane, Australia, the Chief Vision Officer of Elements for Success. And I'm here on the Online Prosperity Show today with the amazing Prosper, talking about what success looks like and how to pivot, review, reflect, review, and recalibrate as many times as you need to create the success that you want in life.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we have a guest whose journey is nothing short of inspiring. Now, Kylee, how are you doing, my love?
Prosper, I'm so happy to be here. I'm just, so energized and pumped. It's just great.
Absolutely. Well, the pleasure is all mine. For those that are watching, we're about to change the way we lead in Australia because Kylee here is the founder of Elements for Success, and she joins us today with an incredible story and insights on how we can be, do, and have a happier existence, especially as leaders in Australia. And Kylie's work spans across the globe, delivering transformational experiences to individuals, teams, and businesses. From her beginnings in the education sector, which I have been corrected, it wasn't just for a little bit. It spanned over 20 years. She's going to be telling us all about that. And now she's become a beacon of empowerment and also sustainable change. And I think Kylie's mission is to help people live purposeful lives. So I want you to buckle up because I think this episode is going to be packed with wisdom, a bit of humor, and a lot of heart. Now, let's jump in. Kylee, I could go on and talk about things I'm not even qualified to talk about. Let's start by hearing about Elements for Success. What inspired you to create this organization?
Well, I often joke with people that I was an accidental business owner because we call it lifelong, right? So lifelong educator. So I started out, and my journey even into education started when I was little. So when I first started, even in primary school, I wanted to be an educator, and I first wanted to be a music teacher. However, apparently you need musical talent for that. So that was my first pivot. So then I went into PE. I wanted to be a PE teacher, but in the 90s, I think that was like the number one occupation of any high schooler in Australia was wanting to be a HPE teacher. So I decided, and then I decided to look at a bit of things that I loved. And I've always loved helping people, even from a little girl. My nana, who lived to nearly 107, when we went around to stayed with her, I was the one that was helping her by going around to visit her friends and do all of these things and chatting with the oldies in the front yard and doing all of that kind of stuff. So from very, very young, I had this helper idea of wanting to help people be better versions of themselves. And when I was in high school, I did some work experience at a school with children that had really quite severe disabilities. And from there, I came away going, oh my gosh, what was that? And in terms of, it was a very confronting experience. And I'm like, oh, I'm not sure whether I can do that or not, because it takes a very special type of person. Anyway, fast track, I went and tried a couple of different other things. And I'm like, you know what? I actually think that's my journey. And so I went and studied and I graduated, and I started off teaching in special school. I also did primary school, secondary school. I worked in regional office overseeing 72 schools on how to cater for diverse learners, deputy principal of inclusion, deputy of mainstream. And then what happened was I actually injured myself. So 2019, just before COVID, I had quite a severe injury. I'd love to say I did something really awesome, like I was like training like a mad person, and you should have seen the other guy. But quite literally, my youngest child was in bed with me and he was annoying me, and I rolled over and did something to my neck. And that's what happened. It was very bizarre. But I actually think the universe is a pretty tricky creature. And I think in the last couple of years of my educational journey, I kind of had struggled to find my sense of purpose. I loved working with the kids. I love working with families, but felt like maybe I just wasn't I don't know, just achieving the things that I was hoping to achieve for families and things like that. So I think the universe kind of like, I've tried subtle, Kylie, and you're not paying attention. So this injury kind of sat me on my butt, for lack of a better word, for a few months. And in that time, I decided to reflect and review and recalibrate my life and decided what are the elements of the role that I'd had that I loved, which was coaching, whether it be a young person, whether it be a family, whether it be my team. I love that element of building capacity in others and helping them find their strengths in themselves. I hated timetabling. Good Lord, trying to organize 700 people or 1,200 people into a timetable. That's just like, I'm like, I don't want to do more of that. So when I started reflecting and I looked at the areas where I really did well, where I was able to walk in my strength, coaching was one of those things. And so I transitioned out in the middle of COVID as a single mum of 3 kids from a permanent government job, and decided that I needed to have my own back. And so hence the beginning of Elements for Success. And over the last couple of years, that's diversified. So I have a building that I hire out. I have a coaching business and I do executive and leadership coaching. But another arm that I do is a lot of advocacy for neurodiversity, neuroinclusion, helping families navigate complex behavior and trauma. Because interestingly, what's really interesting is when we look at leadership and executive coaching, it's all the way that our brains work and how behaviors show up in the workplace. It's the same in these other areas. The language just looks a little bit different, but it's the same concept, helping people understand the function of behaviors, what's healthy, what's not healthy behavior, how to improve our communication skills, particularly in periods of high stress, and then how to pivot and create the outcomes that we desire for ourselves, for our teams, and for our organizations.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Kylie, for taking us on that journey, because obviously from the start, you have a genuine interest in people. You know,
Oh,
when I speak to other people, somebody is either an animal person or a technical person. They love gadgets, systems, processes,
yeah,
and things like that. But yours has been centered just around people, from wanting to be a musical teacher. What was the
without time.
inspiration? Yes, what was the inspiration of wanting to teach to start off with?
I always wanted to help people be better versions of themselves. I think, and education is still something I'm massively passionate advocate for. I think the traditional model that we've got of education maybe be not meeting its target currently in for certain people in especially. But I consider myself a lifelong learner, and I think creating a passion to learn is one of the greatest gifts that we can have. Because even as a leader, if you decide that you've done enough, you become stagnant as a leader, right? So we have to have the mindset, the Kaizen mindset, continuous improvement. And how do we do that in a way that works for us? And creating a passion about learning. I get excited by learning new things. So even big things. I think I just wanted to share that love and passion and helping people create the versions of themselves that they wanted to be. I think that's where that drive came.
Absolutely. And one other thing that I picked up on when you mentioned you had a nonna, and for other people that's your grandma,
Yeah.
who did you say lived up to 107
She
years?
was she was about 30 days short of her 107th birthday.
Absolutely. So, I mean, obviously, we could pay her that. 107 is no easy feat. So many people don't
Yeah.
even go past 50 or 70, you know what I mean? So she would have
Yeah. Yeah.
doubled, their existence. Was there any fundamental life principles that maybe were imparted onto you then? Because that's a different level of learning that other people don't have. Um,
Yeah. So she was born before the First World War, and she was the oldest of 5 siblings, and she raised them, and she had to give up a lot. So she was a very much a servant leader. But one of the things I always joke that she was like the OG of the morning routine. So, I was not a morning person. I now am a morning person, but I was not. And I used to go down there and she'd be up And by the time we got up at like 8 o'clock in the morning, she will have gone for a walk. She will have been down. She lived in Yamba, which is northern New South Wales, coastal town. So she will have gone to the trawlers, got the prawns, made breakfast, lunch, prepared dinner, made a cake, been to see her friend up the road and played 9 holes of golf before we got up in the morning. And I'm like, you're crazy. Like, that's just crazy. And then now I'm like, man, she was smart, because so much can be accomplished in the morning. And I know people have this, it's a bit of a divisive thing, isn't it? You're either a morning person or you're not. But so much can be done in that. And she accomplished so much. And then she'd sit down and have a beer at lunch, a scotch at night. And she was so funny because she was so servant orientated, in the sense that she had this servant model. She used to volunteer at the golf club. She was 95 and volunteering at the aged care facility, of which she was older than everybody in it. And she used to sort them out if they complained about anything. But, so she still, even in her 90s, was still volunteering. That's how she kept herself young. She gave back to community all of the time. And I think that's another one that I learned, is that, the greatest thing that you could do is serve somebody else. And, it helps us ground ourselves, so it's not just about us. And she just had, had a really strong work ethic. But equally, I can remember going down there and they're sitting around the table playing cards and having a good laugh with her friends as well. So, she probably had better balance, even though she grew up in a very harsh time, than most of us do. And yes, times are running faster, but she could do more by, 8 a.m. in the morning than most of us still would get done in a day.
Absolutely. And I think you should definitely learn a thing or two from that alone. I mean, obviously, considering we sort of started communicating, celebrating your birthday, you could be in
Yes.
the running for maybe, twice her age. So I can't wait
Oh
to
my
see.
gosh, I would love to get anywhere close. um, yeah. And she used to have this saying. She said, "This won't make the." She would sit there and she'd be sitting down. We'd be finishing lunch, and then she'd get up and she'd go, "Well, this won't make the baby a dress or pay for the one she's wearing," which kind of meant like, right, let's get on with it. We've still got stuff to do, right? So she had this like, but equally when knock-off time came, she knocked off and really enjoyed, and relaxed and had a bit of fun as well.
I'm so glad you had such a close role model that obviously you can now see. I mean, everybody else pays so much money to know the fountain of youth, yet you had that right in front of you. So, as a lifelong
Yeah.
learner, I mean, you could have watched, oh, you can now retrace her steps and then figure out
Yeah.
what it is that she was doing. So you then went on and became a teacher, especially for the kids that had special needs and things like that. What was that like
Yeah.
for you?
So my specialization was complex behavior. So I worked at a school. My very first teaching position was a school where kids had been expelled from every other school in the area, and they kind of just got landed in my classroom. And this was like 25 years ago, where restraint was something that was part of practice. But you know, I got I got thrown up against walls. I got punched. I got kicked. I got spit on. I got smashed in the head with a cricket bat once. That was not fun. I had a pretty solid headache. After that, didn't go to the staff meeting that afternoon. Got in trouble for not going to the staff meeting, but I did not go because my headache was pretty cracking. And lot has evolved in the way that we do business in that space. And I actually think some of the lessons I learned across my time working in complex disability behavior and trauma is actually lessons that I certainly carry into my leadership and executive coaching, because how our brains work under stress versus under calm definitely impacts how we show up. And if we don't have the right tools to communicate how we're feeling, then we are not going to be as effective as if we have the right tools, right? And if we have the right language and we have the people that are open and the wraparound supports around us to be successful. So there were lots of lessons that I learned, lots of really complex times, lots of really huge milestones. And one of the things that I guess, you hear a lot about now is people talking about celebrate the journey, not just the destination. And I think working in such a complex environment, we really did that really well because it wasn't about the kid getting an A. It was about the kid writing their name. It was about the kid writing a sentence. It was a person filling out a job application. It was getting a job. It was, they didn't hurt anyone today. Woo! So we celebrated these little milestones along the way, not just the destination. So it wasn't just at the end of year 12 they got a university acceptance, which kind of is like mainstream model. There's not a lot of celebrate the success stuff. And that's one of the keys in any organization is you actually have to celebrate the milestones. And we're we're working with generations now that are not just going to accept that they did a good job and be done with it. They do need some validation that they're doing a good job. They need some acknowledgement. And they need and I think we all need that to a degree. Some generationally will tell us we don't. But I think everybody likes to be told they're doing a good job. Everybody likes to be validated for the work they do. And so if we can celebrate those milestones along the way, I think we're going to get greater momentum. It's like that snowball effect that encourages people and we get places faster.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like the little hinges that swing the heavy doors. And,
Yeah.
you could look at it in this way, Kylie. When you're dressing up, there's little accessories that you add, earrings,
Yeah.
cufflinks, everything else,
Yeah.
necklace and things of that nature. Them alone don't make a complete outfit, but your outfit also without those accessories is not
For sure.
complete. So
Yeah.
we should literally acknowledge all the successories, the
Yeah.
little
Oh, I love it. Accessories. I love it. I see what you did there. Brilliant.
the little success accessories that we
Yeah.
pick up along the way. And I don't think it's prevalent in so many places, because obviously and I feel like so many people just go unacknowledged, and that's the reason why so many people end up leaving their jobs, because they don't feel appreciated in the positions and places that they are in.
Yeah. And I'm sure you've experienced this as well. I think sometimes leaders think that people want fanfare and they actually don't. They just want that quiet word. It's not always the big stuff. It's the, hey, I really loved how you handled that situation today. I really loved that you were able to move through that really quickly. I love how you did this. I love it. It's the little things. It doesn't have to be a big fanfare, a morning tea, your name in bold lights. I think sometimes leaders feel like that's what people are asking for. And I don't necessarily think that's actually the case. I think, I used to joke that I can run on the smell of an oily rag. So just a little bit of a great job, Kylie, that'll be enough for me to go, wow, yeah, let's keep going, right? So, but when we sit there and go, we're such an extrinsic reward society now because technology and dopamine and all that we don't necessarily hit that intrinsic stuff. But I think, do you go to your job if you're not going to get paid? We're all extrinsically motivated to a degree, right? Would you do 40 hours a week just for the love because I love doing it? No, because you need to get paid. You've got bills to pay. You want a lifestyle. You want all this kind of stuff. So I think we've got to find some sort of, I hate the word balance, but harmony in terms of teaching people the intrinsic stuff, because I don't think it's explicitly taught anymore. Because if you look at gaming, they put people in those positions to make it as addictive as possible. So you're looking for the extrinsic hit of reward. So it's not as natural. We actually have to explicitly teach it that, are you proud of yourself for doing a good job here? And I have worked with CEOs that have really struggled because in Australia, tall poppy syndrome is also a thing, right? So if I say I'm proud of myself, whoa, what a braggalicious you are, right? So we've been beaten down that acknowledging ourselves is difficult. So when we do, you're like, oh my God, you're so American, this whole chest puffing kind of thing. But no, I actually am proud that I did a good job. I'm really proud that my client got that outcome because of the work we did together, right? I think that's important, and I don't think we teach it very well. So we're frustrated by people needing extrinsic rewards, but we've always needed extrinsic rewards. It's just more evident now with the influx of tech that preys on our desire for extrinsic hits.
Oh, absolutely. That whole instant gratification,
Yeah.
they've solved for that, and everything has, is now aligned with us wanting more of what we can't maybe get from other human beings, and I think that's now creating that sort of imbalance because the other people are also waiting for somebody else to pass on that praise, and it's now a
Yeah.
void and a vacuum that is now created in all of this. And yeah
And one of the flow-on effects around our mental health is our resilience, right? So if we don't get some of that, how resilient are we compared to, the generations from years ago that just sucked it up and got on with it because they didn't acknowledge that their bosses' wording meant so much because they were hardwired a little bit differently to today. So, if we don't have a good sense of resilience and working through hard things, then what? Like, then the domino effect. So leaders have to understand it, and they have to individualize that response because not everyone likes that. That's too confronting for some people. So an individualized measure and response, and that's really just about knowing your team, right? And accepting that you've got diverse players in your team that need different things. And as a leader, that's actually part of your role to know that or to ask instead of assuming that you know the answer.
Absolutely. I quite like that. And I mean, going back to your Nona's sort of example, she would wake up in the morning, get that satisfaction, and get on about her day. Because you can't take that away from somebody who's already gathered all those successories along the way for them to feed off of the day. And what was that statement that you said? You can go on the smell of a rag. Is that?
Oh, I can run on the smell of an oily rag, right? So just that little
Yeah,
little bit
exactly.
of
So
good work,
if you
Kylie, and you're like,
already got, yeah,
yeah,
so
yeah,
you can imagine if you've already, given to yourself in that morning, then
mm,
that rag automatically is fuel enough for you to get
yeah,
by, and
for
I
sure.
believe that's the reason why, I believe it was L Nightingale that says it's just a progressive realization of a worthy
Realization,
ideal,
goal,
because
yeah, yeah,
little by
yep,
little. It's not
yep.
necessarily a one hit, otherwise we'll all be one click wonders. I mean, I try to show up on the internet one click, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I
Oh,
mentioned this a statement that is near and dear to your heart from L Nightingale there. To tell us a little bit
yeah.
about that statement.
Well, because I think when I was looking for, I guess what I was trying to encapsulate in my business and trying to name a business, you know, is actually quite difficult. But anyway, I think success again has been given a bit of a bad rap because if you're seeking success, there's a story that you're doing it at the cost of others. I think there's this unwritten sort of narrative or tall poppy syndrome. Well, if you're a success, what have you done to get there? Or, you've shortcutted your way because we're the land of hard knocks and hard work and you shouldn't. The stories go on, right? So when I came across this realization, I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, because progressive realization, and that's been my journey, like, because I think success is not the end game. It's the progress along the way, going back to those celebrating those little milestones. And I'm not the same person I was last year. I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago. I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago. So that's a progressive realization of the version of myself I want to be. And it's continually evolving depending on, what that looks like for me. But I also think that what looks like success for me might look different for success for you. And that's equally okay. And I think that's the other part of it is, we've got this concept of what successful looks like, mansion, boat, whatever. But you might be satisfied with, I'm living in a unit in Melbourne with my family and kids because I feel loved, I feel valued, I can show up in a job that I love. It's not necessarily $50 million. It's these other things that contribute to what success looks like for me. And I think too many people don't do enough reflection on what does success look like for me? And then the other part of my business is elements. There's lots of different elements that look like, and the elements that you might need to work on might be different to the ones that I might need or that drive me. So that's how the name came about, because I was just so taken. And I love, Earl Nightingale and all of that era around that self, they're the OGs of self-development, right? So going back in, and there's so many lessons. And when you ever see those posts that they put up and they're like, what's your best, favorite book, or, always those books show up, always in any sort of, list of books, because they are the originals and people build and grow and, build concepts off. But they were doing it, so learn from the wisdom of others is one of my life things that I love, like your book collection and my book collection. Do I think I have all the answers? No. Do I think I can learn from the wisdom of others? Yes. And do I then take what's relevant to me in that moment? But then I, go, oh, maybe later. That also, and then if I'm in a tough situation, I'm like, who can I go back to that might be able to guide me through this next step, right? Rather than feeling I have to do it all myself.
You know, I quite like that. First, just touching up on Earl Nightingale, I just listened to his old tapes just for the voice. Have you seen how
Yeah.
distinct the voice is, and how
Yep.
he's got energy and whatever he's putting out there? I don't think they do it like that anymore. Even the ones that are there, the voice doesn't sound like that. So it's
Well, and it's almost like we talk about authentic self a lot, right?
yeah.
And he really epitomized that, because he genuinely is passionate about what he talks about without the flair and the flamboyance and everything. He's easy to listen to because he cares about what he's talking about, and he believes it, right?
Mm, absolutely. Well, you obviously got started on your journey pretty much as wanting to be a music teacher, and then you went into actual PE teaching and teaching people with disabilities, and then the pandemic hit, which basically got you to pivot again. And obviously, you did mention you sort of injured yourself and went on to start a business of your own. First of all,
Yeah.
didn't they warn you that this was not going to be easy?
Um, yeah, so most people thought I was a bit daft, to be honest, at the time, because why would you leave a government job
Yeah.
in the pandemic, particularly as a single mum of 3 kids, right? So with no additional supports. And it was probably, look, we talk about imposter syndrome and we talk about self-doubt, and it was probably one of the first times I probably truly went, right, I'm going to back myself in this moment. And that was probably a bit of a, look, let's be honest, there's a teacher shortage, right? So worst case scenario, I was going to get a job back in education if I ever have to. Medically, that made it was a bit difficult for me because I was still navigating my injury. So I just went. So there's a quote. So speaking of books, there's a book by a lady named Glennon Doyle, and she has a book called Untamed. And she said, and this was another knife to the heart. I love inspirational people that kind of kick my butt a little bit. I mentioned that before. And she said, she has this quote, and she said, "My children don't need me to save them. They need to watch me save myself." And I'm like, huh, interesting. And when I reflect on that comment, it's like I would come home from work tired, irritable. I loved the kids. I loved education, but there was a few things that were no longer aligning to my true north. And I go, was I showing up as the parent I wanted to be? Was I showing up, you know, teaching is one of the most exhausting professions in the world. And I saw this meme the other day that teaching is the only position that you have to go to work, like you have to do work before you get to your job to be able to do your job. And then you don't get time to do the work that you need to do in your job. And then you take it home to finish the work that you didn't get to do in your job, right? And that is teaching 101. And I know people talk about 9 to 3. Well, I don't know, a single educator. And when I was in leadership, my day started at 5 a.m. with relief teacher calls. My day ended at 10 p.m. checking who was going to be away, or was there a parent complaint, or was there something, So that was my day as an educator. And on my holidays, at least half of it, I was sick. because your body's like, can't be sick during school term because it's too busy, too busy, too busy. So your body at the end of it went crash. And then the other half of it was preparing for the next term, semester, whatever it was. So, there's an illusion out there of what teaching is. But so in COVID, I think it was just that having my back was like, and my children needing to watch me save myself was just like this whole thing. And I'm like, what would I say to my kids if they were in a job that was no longer fulfilling them? Would I want them to stay because it was secure and they should just put up and shut up? What if they were in a relationship that wasn't okay, but it was secure? Would I want them to put up and shut up? And I'm like, so when you put it like that, it was a pretty easy decision that I had to back myself. And what my kids see now is I still work hard, don't get me wrong. But I love what I do. So when I come home, I am energized. I am passionate. I am getting really great outcomes for my clients, and I celebrate, my wins with my kids when a client gets an outcome. Or, my son, who's nearly 18, he said, do you know, Mum, you're famous? And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, you showed up on my YouTube recommended. And I'm like, he's like, you've nailed it. And I'm like, righto, pretty low bar, but okay, I'll go with that. So, but, even the fact that, at someone who at my age and stage decided that this no longer served me and I was going to pivot and back myself to do something else. Because I don't want my kids going through life going, well, I joined Subway at 17. Now I have to live with it. You're never too late to choose again. And I think the thing that stops ourselves is narratives of you need security, you need this. And look, I am a conservative person. I am not a huge risk taker. Like, I'm not one of those people that's like burn the boats like Tony Robbins. That ain't me. I'm like, well, we'll just park it over here and I'll just go explore kind of person, because just in case I need to get back in the boat. So that's not me. I don't come from this high risk taking background. So this was probably the biggest thing for me. But it was easy when I started framing it about, what am I showing my kids? What am I modeling for them? And is that the lesson I want for them to learn? Good God, no. So what do I need to do differently? And it made it a pretty easy choice.
Absolutely. I mean, just looking at it like that, because we all know that monkey see, monkey do, all right? And if you no longer can do it for yourself, if you now are doing it for other people, I think it was Zig Ziglar that mentioned, help enough people get what they want, you will then eventually get that which you want. But obviously, while that was happening, I think Steve Jobs says you can't connect the dots looking forwards, you can only connect the dots looking backwards. It must have been pretty scary, because the dinner table turned into a classroom, it turned into a boardroom for you, and it also turned into dinner time with the kids. That's what COVID did to a lot of dinner tables out there. And I can only imagine how you managed to sort all of that and figure it all out, while nobody else is out there for you to high five or maybe elbow with, so to speak. What were some of the biggest obstacles that you would have faced, and how did you overcome them, getting started in your business?
So Gay Hendricks talks about the upper limit problem. So we talk a lot about fear of failure. Like, I'm not great with failure. I don't love it. It's not something I'm like, there's all these things come out like, yeah, fail this and and I'm like, oh no, thank you. I'd like to not. So, but we don't talk a lot about fear of success, because if I'm successful, what does that mean for the people around me? And what will people think of me? Will they think I'm too much for them, or do they think, and coaching is a very interesting industry in the sense that people don't often know what you do. And when they can't conceptualize, they create all these different ideas about what you do and what, and do you think you're better than us now because you do this? And I'm like, never once have I ever in a million years ever thought that, right? So one of the things I talk about in my model is a thing called an ecosystem, and, being really reflective of the energy that is gained by the people you surround yourself, and really doing an audit, energy audit, I call it, about, does this person, place, thing, situation, give me energy or drain my energy? Can I do anything about that? Because the people I was surrounding myself with were people that were kind of driven by fear, and I needed to surround myself with people that were driven by opportunity. So recalibrating that was really key. Some of the adversity. So I also left a really unhealthy marriage that was quite traumatic at the time. And one of the things, nobody likes to go through adversity. Nobody does. And I had a really hard time with the concept of, there's people that say, it doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. And I actually have a really hard time with that concept, because what I went through, I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy. And it's very hard to see how that happened for me. However, Oprah Winfrey once said, there is wisdom within the wounds. And I'm like, that I can get my head around, because there has been so much learning that came out of that I have then been able to apply into different circumstances. So my experience was really awful. But when I was still in education, I had lots of families. I worked in low socioeconomic schools with families going through quite similar circumstances. And people are scared to speak up because they're feared of judgment. But when I sat with families and I'm like, so I know what this means, and I know that you can get through this, and I'm here. I had parents say to me, oh, without me telling, I'm like, oh, you do know. And I'm like, yeah, I do. So let me walk alongside you to help you move through this, and recognize that it's really hard, but you can. And so that gave me a little bit of a unique perspective, I guess, and a unique opportunity that other people don't experience. So when I've gone through different adversities, not having, a backup plan, going through things like that, I guess what I've done is I've been able to, roll up the sleeves, dig deep, and take my learnings, my wisdom from my wounds, to then apply that better into different contexts constantly. So I talk about reflect, review, and recalibrate as many times as you need. Choose again. If something doesn't serve you, you have the power to choose again. And I think that's some of the things that came out of that being able to go, right, this is not working for me, without judgment. What else? What's next? And I think, again, going back to communication, actually, as parents, we tend to try and protect our children from a lot of things, and that's very valid. But allowing my kids to see, hey, I'm okay, I'm going through a hard time at the moment, and talking out the relevant age and stage stuff, but actually modeling for them, talking through problems. Hey, I've got this idea. What do you think? Because we need to advocate for our young people and our, even if we're leaders, our team members, that vulnerability about the only way through, it's the only way is through. You can't go around, you can't go up, you can't go down. Like, you got to go through it. And so with a bit of vulnerability and a whole lot of courage, we can get to the other side. And when we look back, you're like, well, that was hectic. Or sometimes we go, oh, that wasn't maybe as bad as I thought it was going to be, because I've taken those lessons and then applied them. So you get maybe that doesn't hurt quite so much, or, you pick yourself up faster. I was talking to a client this morning and I said, it's not about not going through hard times, but it's about shortening the time that it takes ourselves to get back up. Instead of taking a month, instead of taking a year, 1 week, 1 day, 1 hour, trying to do that, learn the lessons faster so that we can pick ourselves up and keep moving forward.
Absolutely. I like that. And the whole learning lessons bit there is instrumental, because I viscerally believe in life, we're here to live, to learn, and to contribute. So for us to be able to live our best lives, we need to be able to learn how to do that. And even if we do go through stuff, we need to pay attention when stuff is happening around us, so that one day we would have a good story to tell. And maybe not on the online prosperity show, but also in life, you'd have, a story that could help somebody be, do, and have a happier existence. And then the contribution now comes into how are you using those lessons to better somebody else's life? Because some people will not have to go through what you went through, but because you did, they are now learning from you, and you're sending the elevator down so that they can just shorten that space that you're talking about. So it's
Yeah.
like you say, it's a very difficult concept to sort of understand. And I'm supposing these are sort of the lessons that you are now imparting onto your coaching clients without you even realizing, because you were telling me earlier on that people are find it easy to confide in you and talk to you is because you've had this lived experience, which puts you in that position for them to know that you get it.
Yeah. And it's that really authentic empathy around, your experience is your experience, but I can certainly hold space for that. And I think sometimes when you haven't gone through some of those experiences, it's actually quite difficult because your own response to what you're experiencing from this person telling the story is like, oh, that's affecting me. But because I've been through some stuff, I can hold space. And I one of my mottos is safe spaces for brave and courageous conversations, right? And I think that's probably the biggest gift I can give as a coach is to create a safe space for brave and courageous conversations for my clients to talk out loud what that is. And through talking out loud, they usually go like, huh, they have that light bulb moment in their own journey. And, they're like, oh my God, thank you so much. And I'm like, held a safe space for you. You did the hard work, right? So, and that's one of the things I love being able to do.
Absolutely. And what would be the best way that people can obviously enjoy that safe space and obviously get started working with you?
Elementsforsuccess.com.au. You can find me on LinkedIn, Kylee Leota, Kylee, thanks, Mum, Leota. I'm on Insta and Facebook under Elements, and it's number 4 success. Or reach out to me, admin@elementsforsuccess.com.au, and I'd love to chat with you about how we can serve you to grow your leadership journey, whether it's personal leadership, self-leadership as a parent, whether it's self-leadership as in a CEO role. I think leadership applies to everybody, and it's about leading yourself so that you can lead others.
Absolutely. And yeah, I'll make sure that all those links are in the show notes below so that people can actually get started working with you there. Now, Kylee, what a journey. I mean, it started off when you're the young music teacher wannabe and PE teacher wannabe. I mean, kids these days grow up and they want to be YouTubers. And so it's now a whole different world, that you were
Yeah, yeah.
thinking you wanted to teach others and
Mm.
things of that nature. But if knowing what you know now and who you've become, if you would go back to that music teacher wanna be, young Kylee, what sort of advice would you want to leave her with?
I think probably one of the biggest things I'd like to leave her with is that your feelings are valid and that you have a gift to bring to the world through your helping and your empathetic nature, and never question it, because for a long time I did. So I think that's probably one of the biggest gifts I would like her to know.
Absolutely. And Kylie, if Nona was still obviously playing golf and everything else that comes along with it and volunteering, at her old people's home there or at her
Yeah.
reserve there, what would you say about the person you've become today?
I think she would be really proud of the strength and courage that I have had, and I guess, that old school, the getting on with it. Like, she went through adversity that I can't even begin to fathom. She went through wars. She went through, her husband was a POW. Like, she went through a whole heap of stuff, right? That, feels like it pales into comparison for us. So her modeling the way, I think she would be very proud of the fact that despite the knocks, I just keep getting up and I keep going and I keep moving forward, and I don't let myself become cynical about this life, and that I live it with passion and I live it with the goal of serving others more powerfully. So I think she would be proud of that.
Absolutely. Well, we just recently celebrated your birthday, and how are we
Yes.
celebrating your 109th birthday?
Well, I think this will be another podcast episode for sure, my 109th, and I expect you to lead the way. Sort of like, in America, they have like an event where they host a celebration. Can you be the MC for the night, Prosper? We'll book it in
Fantastic.
the calendars now. Can you send a calendar placeholder, please?
Books will be written about that day, movies.
Well,
You
the bits that we're allowed to talk about,
know.
probably. But yes,
Absolutely. Well, no, Kylie, I can't thank you enough for the time and space that you shared with us today. I mean, obviously, I just reached out and I was like, yeah, why don't we have you on your show? And little did I know
yeah,
that we were going to create such a masterpiece. And yeah, I mean, your life story and your experience have so much value for those that are watching right now. And it's only a matter of having to understand what you've been through and now appreciate what it is that you are working on. I've got a really big soft spot for teachers. I don't know if you know my story based on me coming to Australia. It was through the influence of a teacher that I met when I was 13 years old, who
amazing.
literally said to me, if ever you are in Melbourne, let's have a cuppa. And I took that as a challenge, and here I am. So teachers really have a lot of influence to people. So on behalf of every life that you have touched and person that has learned from you, thank you so much for the work that you're doing.
Oh, Prosper, thank you so much. And I think that's the truth, like just there, that influence that a teacher can have, right? So, you know, we define finding those connections, I think, is such key to living your best life. And I think we have such an important role, and connection is at the foundation of that.
Fantastic. Well, I can't thank you enough for sharing your incredible journey and valuable insights with us. It's been a pleasure getting to know you and having you on the show. And for those that are watching right now, if you actually enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rewatch it for more inspiration, because I know there's a lot that we talked about and you would have just been going through without actually taking notes. And I will also put in the links that will help you connect with Kylie so that you won't miss out on what's coming next on her journey. Until next time, keep striving for prosperity and living your purpose. Bye for now.